The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide enough to hold 1,000 beings from across the stars. Today, it held representatives from 12 different species, all gathered for one purpose. Emperor Zarthan stood at the center platform, his tall figure casting shadows across the polished floor. His blue skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his forearms moved with practiced grace as he spoke. Fellow beings of the galaxy, his voice carried to every corner of the hall, we face a new threat. A species that refuses to follow our ways. A species that grows too strong, too fast. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the human section, her face calm but her hands tight on the armrests of her chair. She had expected this day would come. Earth had been part of the galactic community for only 3 years, but already the older species were afraid. The humans, Emperor Zarthan continued, have shown they cannot be trusted. They build weapons when we tell them to build farms. They explore dangerous regions of space when we warn them to stay away. They ask questions that should not be asked. A rumble of agreement came from the alien delegates. The Zarathi crystalline beings chimed like breaking glass. The insect-like Vorthak clicked their mandibles. The gas-floating ethereals pulsed with angry light. Sarah stood up. Your Majesty, may I speak? You may speak, human, but it will not change our decision. Earth has followed every major treaty we signed. We have not attacked any other species. We have not taken any worlds that belong to others. What crime have we committed? Emperor Zarthan's golden eyes fixed on her. You exist without permission. You grow without limits. You think without boundaries. These are crimes against the natural order. The natural order according to who? According to those who have kept peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. And how many species have you destroyed to keep this peace? The hall fell silent. Emperor Zarthan's expression darkened. We do not destroy. We guide, we teach. We help younger species find their proper place. And what is our proper place? Serving those wiser than yourselves. Sarah laughed, a sound that made several aliens step back. We tried serving others once. It did not work out well for anyone involved. Emperor Zarthan raised one of his hands. A holographic image appeared above the platform, showing Earth and its surrounding space. The human homeworld and all its colonies are hereby declared enemies of the Galactic Empire. You have 72 standard hours to surrender all military vessels and submit to Imperial rule. Refuse and face the combined might of our fleets. The image changed to show the Imperial Armada. Hundreds of ships filled the display, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built. Their sleek forms and glowing weapons made them look like metal gods floating in space. 12 species stand united against you, the Emperor said. Our combined fleets number in the thousands. Our weapons can crack planets. Our shields can stop stars. What can one small species do against such power? Sarah looked at the display for a long moment. Then she activated her own communicator. Admiral Torres, are you receiving this transmission? A gruff voice answered from the speakers. I see it, Commander. Quite a light show they have there. They are offering us 72 hours to surrender. How generous of them. What should I tell them? Sarah looked directly at Emperor Zarthan. Tell them we decline. The alien delegates erupted in shocked chatter. Emperor Zarthan's eyes widened. You refuse? Do you not understand what you face? We understand perfectly, Sarah said. You have bigger ships, more weapons, and greater numbers. You believe this makes you superior. It does make us superior. Maybe. We will find out soon enough. Admiral Torres's voice came through the speakers again. Commander, should I begin preparations? Yes, Admiral. Activate all protocols, all of them. Sarah paused. Around her, the alien delegates were whispering among themselves. She could hear words like madness and suicide being translated by the universal communicators. All of them, she confirmed. The communication ended. Sarah turned to face the assembled aliens. You want to know what one small species can do? You are about to learn. Emperor Zarthan stepped forward. You are making a mistake that will destroy your entire race. Perhaps, but it will be our mistake to make. I do not understand you humans. Why choose death over service? Sarah smiled, and something in that smile made the nearest aliens move away from her. Because, Your Majesty, some things are worse than death. And we learned that lesson a long time ago. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, Emperor Zarthan called out, Your ships are outnumbered 50-1. Your weapons are primitive. Your people are untrained. This will not be a war. It will be an execution. Sarah stopped at the doorway and looked back. You know what I find interesting about this galaxy? You have all been at peace for so long you have forgotten what war actually means, Ryuang. And you remember? We remember everything, she paused. Tell me, Your Majesty, how many wars has your species fought against itself? We are civilized. We do not fight our own kind. We fought ourselves for thousands of years before we reached the stars. We perfected every method of destruction. We learned every way to kill. We discovered every form of suffering. And then we learned to direct all of that knowledge outward. The hall had gone completely quiet. Even the translation devices seemed to struggle with Sarah's words. You think you are declaring war on a primitive species? She continued. But what you are really doing is waking something up. Something that has been sleeping since we joined your peaceful galaxy. Something we hoped we would never need again. Emperor Zarthan's voice was quieter now. What are you talking about? We call ourselves human. But that is just the name we use when we are being civilized. When we are not being civilized, Sarah shrugged. Well, you will see. She walked out of the hall, leaving behind a room full of confused and frightened aliens. Emperor Zarthan stared at the empty doorway for a long time. In the silence, an old voice spoke from the back of the hall. Your Majesty, perhaps we should reconsider. Emperor Zarthan turned to see General Korath, a scarred veteran who had served the Empire for decades. What did you say, General? I said perhaps we should reconsider. I have fought many battles, seen many species fall, but there was something in that human's voice. Fear, General. No, Your Majesty. Recognition. As if she knew something we do not. Emperor Zarthan waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. They are primitives trying to frighten us with words. Words cannot stop our fleets. General Korath said nothing more, but his old eyes remained troubled. He had heard something in the human's voice that reminded him of things he preferred to forget. Things from the dark years when the Empire had faced an enemy that fought without rules or mercy. The council session ended, and the delegates began to leave. As they filed out, several species began making quiet preparations for the coming war. None of them noticed General Korath remaining behind, staring at the empty platform where Sarah Chen had stood. Something about her words bothered him. Something about the way she had spoken of war as if it were an old friend. He made a mental note to review the intelligence files on humanity before the fleets departed. It was a decision that would soon save many lives. The Imperial shipyards buzzed with activity. Across 12 star systems, the greatest fleet in galactic history was taking shape. Admiral Vextai stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching thousands of vessels gather in formation. The crystalline being's body reflected the lights of the assembled armada like a living prism. Status report, he commanded, his voice creating musical tones in the air. 2,700 vessels ready for combat, his aide reported. The hegemony contributes 800 battleships. The Zarathi bring 600 crystal destroyers. The Vorthak swarm ships number in the thousands. Admiral Vextai studied the tactical displays. Human space appeared as a small red dot surrounded by blue Imperial territory. Intelligence reports showed only 300 human vessels scattered across their colonies. Most of them converted cargo ships with basic weapons. Their largest ship is half the size of our smallest destroyer, the aide continued. Their weapons appear to be simple kinetic projectiles and primitive energy beams. No advanced shielding detected. What about their ground forces? Approximately 2 billion humans across all colonies. No evidence of advanced military training. Their soldiers use chemical propellant weapons and basic armor. Some reports suggest they still fight with explosive devices. Admiral Vextai's crystalline features shifted into what might have been amusement. Explosives? How quaint. Very well. We will begin with Proxima Centauri, their nearest outpost. A quick victory there will encourage the rest to surrender. While the Imperial fleet prepared for easy conquest, Earth itself was transforming. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in a bunker 3 miles beneath the surface, watching screens that showed activity across the planet. Every major city was emptying. But these were not ordinary evacuations. Transport 7 is loaded and ready, reported her assistant. 3,000 civilians, including 400 children. Combat ratings? Every adult scores expert level or higher on tactical assessments. The children? He paused. The children are scoring higher than most of our military officers. Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly. This was what happened when a species spent thousands of years in constant warfare. Even their children learned strategy before they learned to read properly. Every human carried the genetic memory of survival through endless conflict. What about the weapon systems? All prototype devices are operational. The Cascade bombs are ready for deployment. The adaptive AI networks are online. The nanite swarms are active and awaiting orders. Dr. Vasquez looked at a display showing weapon types that violated 17 different galactic conventions on warfare. Weapons designed not just to kill but to terrify. Earth had never signed those conventions. Begin Phase 2 preparations. Activate the sleeper protocols. Across human space, seemingly empty asteroids began to move. Space stations that appeared to be simple mining platforms revealed hidden weapon arrays. Cargo ships released clouds of microscopic machines that would turn any metal they touched into more machines. On Luna, Admiral Marcus Torres reviewed intelligence reports about the approaching Imperial fleet. His weathered face showed no emotion as he read the numbers. "Sir," his aide said, "they outnumber us nearly 10 to 1. Should we consider the surrender option?" Torres looked up from his reports. "Son, how old are you?" 23, sir." "Ever study Earth history?" "Some, sir." "Tell me about the Battle of Thermopylae." The young officer looked confused. "Sir?" 300 Spartans held off an army of hundreds of thousands. They all died, but they proved something important. "What was that, sir?" "That numbers don't always matter. What matters is how willing you are to do whatever it takes to win." Torres stood up and walked to a window overlooking the lunar surface. "These aliens have been at peace for 10,000 years. They have forgotten what desperation looks like. And we remember everything." Torres turned back to his aide. "Send a message to all human forces. Tell them it is time to remember who we used to be." The message went out across human space, encoded in frequencies that only human equipment could detect. On colony worlds, mining stations, and exploration vessels, humans received the same simple phrase: "Protocol 7 is active." Children stopped playing games and began reviewing tactical manuals. Elderly civilians started preparing weapons they had hoped never to use again. Scientists abandoned peaceful research and began building devices that existed only in nightmares. General Korath sat in his private quarters aboard the Imperial flagship, reading files that made his old scars ache. The intelligence reports on humanity were thin, mostly based on the few peaceful encounters over the past 3 years. But buried in the archives, he had found something else. 30 years ago, during the Void Wars against the extragalactic invaders, a damaged human ship had been found drifting in Imperial space. The crew had been taken aboard for medical treatment and study. They had seemed primitive, helpless. The Empire had eventually released them with apologies and some basic medical supplies. Korath had been a young officer then, assigned to security. He remembered the humans, quiet, polite, grateful for the help. They had asked many questions about Imperial technology and military tactics. At the time, everyone had assumed it was simple curiosity. But Korath remembered something else. One of the humans, a female with dark hair, had asked to see their weapons testing facility. When shown the impressive energy cannons and particle beams, she had nodded politely and asked, "But what do you do when those don't work?" The Imperial officers had laughed. "They always work," they had said. The human had smiled sadly. "Nothing always works. That is why you need backup plans. And backup plans for the backup plans." At the time, it had seemed like the paranoid thinking of a primitive species. Now reading the reports of human colonies that seemed to disappear overnight, of mining operations that left no trace, of exploration ships that never reported their true locations, Korath wondered if the humans had been preparing for this day since their first contact with the galaxy. He activated his communication system and requested an audience with Emperor Zarthan. It was time to share what he knew about their enemy. Meanwhile, at Proxima Centauri, the first human outpost waited in apparent vulnerability. The station appeared to be a simple research facility with minimal defenses. Long-range scans showed fewer than 1,000 humans aboard, mostly scientists and technicians. What the scans did not show were the modifications that had been made in the past 72 hours. The station's fusion reactor had been converted into something much more dangerous. The research laboratories now contained weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in small areas of space. The humans aboard were not scientists anymore. They were soldiers who remembered what their species had been before they reached the stars. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood on the command deck of her destroyer. hidden in the shadow of an asteroid field. Her ship had been declared lost in space 6 months ago, officially destroyed in a mining accident. In reality, it had been preparing for this moment. Enemy fleet approaching, her tactical officer reported. Admiral Vextai's crystal ships are in the lead. Perfect, signaled the other ghost ships. It is time to show these aliens what happens when you declare war on Earth. Rodriguez looked at her crew. They were young, most of them barely out of training. But in their eyes, she saw something that would have terrified the approaching aliens. She saw the look of humans who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Remember, she told them, we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting to show the galaxy who we really are. Today, they learn why our ancestors conquered an entire world before they learned to leave it. The Imperial fleet dropped out of hyperspace, confident and organized. They found what appeared to be empty space and one small defenseless station. They had no idea they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in human history. Admiral Vextai's fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. The crystalline commander stood on his bridge, studying the tactical displays with satisfaction. Proxima Centauri appeared exactly as intelligence had predicted. One small research station, a few scattered asteroids and empty space. Sir, we are detecting the human outpost, his tactical officer reported. Minimal energy signatures, no weapons charging. They appear to be attempting to surrender. How disappointing, Vextai mused. I had hoped for at least some resistance. Very well. Prepare boarding parties. We will accept their surrender and move on to the next target. The Imperial fleet spread out in a standard capture formation. 800 ships arranged themselves around the human station like predators surrounding wounded prey. The Zarathi crystal ships hummed with contained energy. The Vorthak swarm vessels clicked and chittered with excitement. This would be over quickly. Sir, the communications officer announced, we are receiving a transmission from the human station. Put it through. A human face appeared on the main screen. The being looked young, with short brown hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple uniform with no visible rank markings. Imperial Fleet, this is Dr. Sarah Kim of Proxima Research Station. We want to discuss terms of surrender. Admiral Vextai felt a surge of satisfaction. Wise choice, human. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force when we understand, but could we have a few minutes to prepare? We have sensitive research materials that need to be secured. You have 10 minutes. Do not test our patience, the transmission ended. Vextai turned to his officers. Signal the fleet. Maintain positions. This will be simpler than expected. What Admiral Vextai did not know was that Dr. Sarah Kim had died 3 days ago, along with every other scientist on the station. The face on the screen belonged to Captain Maria Santos, one of Earth's most experienced special operations officers. She had been waiting in the asteroid field for 72 hours, watching Imperial ships gather through hidden sensors. All units. This is Ghost Leader, she whispered into her communicator. The fish are in the barrel. Begin the hunt. Across the asteroid field, human ships began to move. They had been hiding for weeks, their crews surviving on minimal life support and emergency rations. Their vessels looked like space junk covered in fake damage and debris. The Imperial sensors had dismissed them as wreckage from old mining operations. Captain Lisa Rodriguez felt her destroyer shake as the engines came online for the first time in days. Around her, 20 other ships were doing the same thing. They moved slowly, carefully, using the asteroids as cover. Weapon status? She asked quietly. All systems green, her tactical officer replied. Kinetic bombardment ready. Nuclear packages armed. Nanite dispersal systems online. Remember, we hit them hard and fast. No mercy, no quarter. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. The Imperial fleet waited patiently, unaware that death was approaching from every direction. Admiral Vextai reviewed plans for the next phase of the war. After Proxima fell, they would move on to the outer colonies. The humans would surrender within a week. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Sir, the communications officer said, the humans are not responding to our signals. Perhaps they are having trouble with their equipment, Vextai replied. Send a boarding shuttle to investigate. A small Imperial craft detached from the fleet and approached the research station. As it drew near, sensors detected something unusual. Sir, the station appears to be empty. No life signs detected. Admiral Vextai frowned. Scan the surrounding area. Where did they go? Before anyone could answer, space around the Imperial fleet exploded into violence. The first attack came from above, where Captain Rodriguez's destroyer had been hiding behind a large asteroid. Her ship dropped from its hiding place like a stone from heaven, all weapons firing. Kinetic rounds traveling at significant fractions of light speed tore through the shields of 3 Zarathi vessels before they even knew they were under attack. "Contact! Contact!" Vextai shouted. "All ships, battle stations." But the attacks were coming from everywhere. Human vessels emerged from asteroid fields, from behind debris clouds, from places where Imperial sensors insisted nothing could hide. They moved with desperate speed, closing to point-blank range before the larger alien ships could bring their main weapons to bear. The human ships were smaller, weaker, and individually outgunned. But they fought like nothing the Empire had ever encountered. When their shields failed, they kept fighting. When their weapons were destroyed, they used their ships as weapons. Captain Rodriguez watched her main gun explode in a shower of sparks. Her ship was dying around her, but 3 Imperial vessels were already dead and 2 more were burning. "Ma'am," her tactical officer called out, "we have lost main power. Weapons are offline. Hull breaches on 5 decks. How long until the reactor overloads?" 3 minutes if we push it to critical." Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. An Imperial battleship was moving to finish them off, its massive form blocking out the stars. "Signal the fleet," she said calmly. "Tell them Ghost 7 is going for a ramming run." "Ma'am, you heard me." She activated the ship's communication system as her destroyer accelerated toward the enemy battleship. Her voice carried across all frequencies. "This is Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. Today you learn why humans conquered their world before they learned to leave it. We are the children of warriors. We are the heirs of survivors, and we do not know how to quit." Her ship struck the Imperial battleship just as its reactor went critical. The explosion lit up space like a new star, taking both vessels with it. But Rodriguez was not alone. Across the battlefield, other human ships were making similar choices. When conventional weapons failed, they used their ships as missiles. When their ships were destroyed, the crews activated personal weapons and tried to reach enemy vessels in escape pods. The Imperial officers watched in horror as humans turned everything into a weapon. Cargo containers became bombs. Communication arrays became kinetic projectiles. Even pieces of destroyed ships were somehow weaponized and fired at Imperial vessels. "Sir," one of Vextai's officers reported, his voice shaking, "they are not fighting like any species we have encountered. They are enjoying this." Admiral Vextai could see it too. Through the chaos of battle, he caught glimpses of human faces on communication screens. They should have been screaming in terror or begging for mercy. Instead, they were smiling. Some were even laughing. One human voice came through clearly on an open channel. "Finally, do you know how boring the last 3 years have been? Thank you for giving us something to shoot at." "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "we are losing ships faster than anticipated. Recommend immediate withdrawal." Vextai looked at his display. Half his fleet was gone or damaged. The humans had lost nearly all their ships, but they had made each loss count. Worse, the few surviving human vessels were still fighting, still closing for ramming attacks, still refusing to surrender. "Signal retreat," he ordered. "Full withdrawal to safe distance." The Imperial fleet began to pull back, but the humans followed. Even with their ships falling apart around them, they pursued the retreating aliens, firing everything they had until their weapons ran dry and their ships died. The last human vessel exploded just as the Imperial fleet reached safe distance. Admiral Vextai stared at the debris field where a simple research station had become a graveyard for hundreds of ships. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving a transmission." "From where?" "All human ships are destroyed." "It appears to be coming from everywhere, sir." A human voice filled the bridge, calm and cold. "This is Admiral Marcus Torres of Earth Defense Command. You have just experienced a minor skirmish with a handful of our ships. We have thousands more. Each one is crewed by people who have been preparing for this fight their entire lives. Each one carries weapons that your people cannot imagine. Each one is commanded by someone who would rather die than live under alien rule." The voice paused, then continued. "You came here expecting to fight a primitive species. Instead, you have awakened something that has been sleeping for 3 years. Something that learned to wage war before it learned to make peace. Something that turned an entire world into a battlefield and called it home. Admiral Vextai found his voice. What are you? The human's laugh was like ice breaking. We are what happens when evolution favors the survivors of endless war. We are what you get when a species spends thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. We are what your nightmares would look like if they learned to build starships. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial fleet alone with their dead and their growing fear. Admiral Vextai looked at his remaining ships, then at the debris field that had once been the strongest force he had ever commanded. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Terror. Emperor Zarthan paced across his private chambers, his forearms moving in agitated patterns. The reports from Proxima Centauri made no sense. Admiral Vextai, one of his finest commanders, had retreated from a handful of primitive human ships. Worse, he had lost half his fleet in the process. Your Majesty, his aide announced, General Korath requests an immediate audience. He says it concerns the human threat. Send him in. General Korath entered the chamber slowly. The old soldier looked tired, his scarred face showing deep lines of worry. He had served the Empire for 60 years, fought in dozens of campaigns, and never once requested an emergency meeting with the Emperor. Your Majesty, I must speak of something I witnessed 30 cycles ago. Something about the humans. Emperor Zarthan stopped pacing. General, you are one of my most trusted advisors. But if you are here to tell me that a few primitive ships justify Admiral Vextai's retreat, no, Your Majesty. I am here to tell you that we have made a terrible mistake. Korath moved to the center of the room. During the Void Wars, when the extragalactic invaders were pushing into our space, we found a damaged human vessel drifting near the battle zone. I remember the reports. A simple exploration ship. Yes, Your Majesty. We brought the crew aboard for medical treatment. 12 humans, injured but alive. They seemed grateful, harmless. They asked many questions about our technology, our tactics, our history. Emperor Zarthan gestured impatiently. Get to the point, General. The point, Your Majesty, is that I was there. I saw what happened next. Korath's voice grew quiet. After we repaired their ship and prepared to release them, our medical staff informed them about the experiments. Experiments? Standard procedure for unknown species, Your Majesty. Tissue samples, brain scans, genetic mapping, all approved by Imperial science protocols. Emperor Zarthan nodded. This was routine when encountering new life forms. And the humans asked to see the laboratory where the experiments were conducted. They wanted to understand what had been done to them. Korath paused. We showed them, thinking it would demonstrate our advanced medical knowledge. What was their reaction? At first, nothing. They examined the equipment, asked technical questions, took notes. They seemed impressed by our technology. Korath's scarred hands clenched into fists. Then one of them, a female, asked if we had permission to conduct these experiments. Permission? They were unconscious. Emergency medical treatment does not require. That is what we told them. The female listened carefully, then asked another question. If we had done the same things to your people without permission, what would happen to us? Emperor Zarthan was beginning to understand why his general looked so worried. What did you tell her? The truth. That it would be considered an act of war. That we would hunt down the perpetrators and make them pay. Korath met the Emperor's eyes. Your Majesty, the human smiled when I said that. Smiled? Not with happiness. With recognition, as if she finally understood something important. Korath began walking around the room. Then she asked to speak privately with her crew. We allowed it, thinking it was harmless. What did they discuss? We do not know. They spoke in a human language that our translators could not decode at the time. But after their conversation, something changed. The way they looked at us, the way they moved, even the way they breathed. It was as if they had transformed from harmless explorers into something else entirely. Emperor Zarthan felt a chill run down his spine. What happened next? They thanked us politely for our help and prepared to leave. But as their ship departed, the female sent a final message. She said, "Thank you for teaching us about Imperial medical procedures. We will remember everything we learned here." That sounds like a normal farewell. No, Your Majesty. It was a promise. And 3 days later, when the extragalactic invaders captured one of our medical ships, something unprecedented happened. Korath activated a holographic display. Images filled the air showing the aftermath of a battle. Twisted metal, strange burn patterns, and debris that seemed to move on its own. The invaders had captured our ship intact, along with 300 Imperial personnel. Standard procedure would have been to hold them for information extraction. Instead, they died. How? We never found out exactly what killed them. The invader ship was destroyed from the inside. Every alien aboard was dead, but not from weapons fire. They appeared to have been killed by their own equipment. Medical devices that had somehow turned lethal. Life support systems that had become torture devices. Emperor Zarthan stared at the images. You think the humans were responsible? I know they were. Because when we recovered the wreckage, we found something impossible. Equipment that should not have existed. Devices that combined Imperial medical technology with human engineering in ways that violated every law of science and ethics. But the humans were nowhere near that battle. They did not need to be there, Your Majesty. They had learned everything they needed from their time aboard our ship. They had studied our technology, understood our weaknesses, and then somehow transmitted that knowledge to their people. Korath deactivated the display. 3 days, Your Majesty. In 3 days, they went from grateful guests to invisible allies of our enemies. Emperor Zarthan sat down heavily. You believe they have been planning this war since their first contact with us? I believe they have been planning for war since before they met us. What I witnessed 30 cycles ago was not a species learning about conflict. It was a species recognizing an opportunity to perfect their existing knowledge. Existing knowledge of what? War, Your Majesty. Not the civilized conflicts between star nations that we call war. Real war. The kind of warfare that a species develops when it spends thousands of years fighting itself. General Korath moved to the window overlooking the Imperial fleet. Thousands of ships stretched into the distance, the pride of 12 different civilizations. Your Majesty, every species in this galaxy learned to make peace before they learned to make war. We developed interstellar travel to explore and trade. We built weapons to defend ourselves from wild animals or natural disasters. Even our conflicts with other species are limited, civilized affairs with rules and boundaries. And the humans? The humans are different. They learned to wage war before they learned anything else. They spent millennia fighting themselves with creativity and dedication that would impress scholars in any other field. They turned warfare into an art form, a science, a religion. Emperor Zarthan looked at his general with growing alarm. What are you saying? I am saying that we just declared war on a species that has forgotten more about conflict than we ever learned. A species that spent thousands of years asking themselves one question: how can we kill more efficiently? Korath turned from the window. And now they are asking that question about us. But our technology is superior. Our ships are stronger. Our weapons more advanced. Technology can be stolen, copied, improved. Ships can be destroyed, captured, reverse engineered. Weapons can be turned against their makers. Korath's voice grew heavy with certainty. But experience, Your Majesty. Experience cannot be replicated, and they have thousands of years of experience in making war. Emperor Zarthan stood up slowly. What do you recommend, General? I recommend that we offer immediate terms for peace, before they show us what they have really been preparing for. You would have me surrender to a primitive species? I would have you surrender to a species that has turned primitiveness into a weapon. A species that learned to win by being underestimated. Korath met his emperor's eyes. Your Majesty, at Proxima Centauri, they used a few dozen ships to destroy half of Admiral Vextai's fleet. Ships that should have been helpless against our technology. How? By fighting in ways we did not expect. By using tactics we had never encountered. By treating their own lives as weapons. Korath paused. Your Majesty, what do you think they will do when they bring their full forces to bear? Emperor Zarthan looked out at his great fleet, the pride of the galaxy. For the first time since declaring war on humanity, he began to wonder if he had made a mistake. General, how many humans are there in total? Across all their colonies? Approximately 8 billion. And if even a small percentage of them fight like those at Proxima Centauri? General Korath said nothing. The answer was obvious to both of them. 8 billion humans who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to wage war. The Imperial Armada gathered at the edge of Sol system, 3,000 ships strong. Emperor Zarthan had decided to end this war quickly with overwhelming force. Every species in the Empire had contributed their finest vessels. This was not just about defeating humanity anymore. It was about showing the galaxy that the Empire could not be defied. Sir, reported Admiral Vextai, still shaken from his defeat at Proxima Centauri, we are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the human system. Earth appears to be different than our previous scans indicated. Emperor Zarthan studied the tactical displays from his command ship. Earth sat in the center of the solar system like a blue jewel, but something was wrong. The planet was surrounded by structures that had not been there 3 days ago. Massive orbital platforms, weapon arrays, and defensive grids that seemed to grow even as they watched. How is this possible? Our intelligence showed minimal defensive installations. Sir, it appears the humans have been preparing for this longer than we realized. Those installations, they were hidden somehow, disguised as space debris, asteroids, even moons. But the real shock came when the fleet moved deeper into the system. What they found defied everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The asteroid belt had become a fortress. Every piece of space rock bigger than a shuttle had been converted into a weapon platform. Mining stations revealed themselves to be battleships in disguise. Cargo haulers dropped their false hulls to show armor and weapons that rivaled Imperial dreadnoughts. Sir, the tactical officer announced, his voice rising with panic. We are detecting human ships throughout the system. Thousands of them. They were hiding everywhere. Admiral Vextai felt his crystalline body resonate with fear. How many ships? We cannot get an accurate count, sir. They keep appearing from hiding places our sensors cannot detect. Current estimate is over 5,000 vessels, but that number keeps growing. Emperor Zarthan stared at the displays in disbelief. This is impossible. Our intelligence showed only 300 human ships total. A new voice filled the bridge, calm and cold. Your intelligence was based on what we wanted you to see. Admiral Marcus Torres appeared on the main screen, his weathered face showing no emotion. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity. Emperor Zarthan, I am Admiral Torres of Earth Defense Command. Welcome to Sol System. You are trespassing in human space. Admiral Torres, you are surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled. Surrender now and your species will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. Torres smiled, and that smile made every alien on the bridge step backward. Your Majesty, let me show you something interesting. The display changed to show a star map of the galaxy. As they watched, red dots began appearing throughout Imperial space. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. Those are human ships, Your Majesty. Ships that have been traveling through your empire for the past 3 years. Ships you never detected because you were not looking for them. Emperor Zarthan felt his 4 hearts skip beats. Impossible. We monitor all hyperspace travel. You monitor registered hyperspace travel. But humans learned to travel between stars before we joined your peaceful galaxy. We learned to hide in the dark spaces between worlds. We learned to move without being seen. More red dots appeared on the map. They surrounded every major Imperial world, every fleet base, every important installation. How? Whispered Admiral Vextai. Because we spent 3 years studying your empire while pretending to be harmless explorers. We learned your patrol routes, your communication frequencies, your weapon signatures. We memorized the location of every important target. Torres leaned forward, and we positioned assets accordingly. Emperor Zarthan realized the true scope of his mistake. You planned this from the beginning. We planned for this from the beginning. There is a difference. Torres activated another display. Your Majesty, let me tell you about human history. For thousands of years, we fought wars against ourselves, nation against nation, ideology against ideology, brother against brother. We perfected every method of conflict. We learned every way to destroy. We discovered every form of tactical thinking. The display showed images from Earth's history, ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars that consumed entire continents. But more importantly, we learned to survive. Every human alive today is descended from people who lived through apocalyptic conflicts. We carry the genetic memory of species-wide warfare. It is built into our DNA. What are you saying? I am saying that when you declared war on humanity, you did not wake up a sleeping giant. You woke up 8 billion sleeping giants, each one trained from birth to think tactically, each one carrying the knowledge of how to fight when everything else fails. As if summoned by his words, new contacts began appearing on Imperial sensors. These were not the hidden ships or disguised platforms. These were something else entirely. Sir, the tactical officer reported, his voice breaking with fear. We are detecting massive structures moving throughout the system. They appear to be alive. The screens showed creatures of metal and flesh, ships that had grown rather than been built. They moved through space like living things, their hulls pulsing with organic rhythms. "My God," whispered Admiral Vextai. "What are those things?" "Those," Torres said calmly, "are the ships we built for people who were too dangerous to live on Earth. Humans who were exiled not because they were criminals, but because they were too good at war, too creative with violence, too willing to cross lines that should not be crossed." The living ships began to surround the Imperial fleet. As they moved, their hulls shifted and changed, revealing weapons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. "For 3 years we told you we were explorers seeking peaceful contact with the galaxy. That was not entirely false. Some of us do want peace," Torres paused. "But others have been traveling the dark between stars for decades, waiting for a reason to come home. Waiting for a war worthy of their attention." Emperor Zarthan found his voice. "What do you want?" "What we have always wanted. To be left alone to live as we choose. And if we withdraw our forces, then this ends here. Your fleets return to Imperial space. Humanity continues to exist on the edges of your empire, bothering no one. And if we do not?" Torres smiled again, and this time the smile reached his eyes. "Then you learn what 8 billion humans can accomplish when they stop pretending to be civilized." Around the Imperial fleet, space began to fill with human vessels. Not just ships, but structures that defied classification. Swarms of tiny craft that moved like schools of metal fish. Massive constructs that seemed to bend reality around them. And everywhere, the living ships with their crews of human exiles who had spent decades perfecting new forms of warfare. "Your Majesty," Torres continued, "you have 2 choices. You can surrender now and live to rule what remains of your empire, or you can continue this war and discover why some species are better left alone." Emperor Zarthan looked at his displays. His 3,000 ships were outnumbered 10 to 1 by vessels that fought with technologies he could not understand, crewed by beings who treated war as an art form. "Sir," Admiral Vextai said quietly, "recommend immediate surrender. We are not equipped for this kind of conflict." General Korath's voice came through the communication system. "Your Majesty, I tried to warn you. Humans do not just fight wars. They are war, and now they have united against a common enemy." Emperor Zarthan looked one more time at the sea of human vessels surrounding his fleet. In the distance, Earth hung in space like a blue beacon, protected by forces that had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. "Admiral Torres," he said finally, "the Galactic Empire formally surrenders to humanity. We will withdraw all forces from human space immediately." "Wise choice, Your Majesty. But tell me one thing. How long have you been preparing for this day?" Torres was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. "Your Majesty, we have been preparing for this day since the first human picked up a rock and used it as a weapon. Every war we fought against ourselves taught us something new. Every defeat showed us how to win the next time. Every victory reminded us to prepare for the next enemy." The transmission ended. Around the Imperial fleet, human ships began to withdraw, fading back into the darkness they had emerged from. Within hours, the aliens were alone in their part of space, leaving Sol System to its rightful owners. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her underground bunker, watching the Imperial retreat on her screens. Around her, technicians were already beginning to shut down the weapon systems that had never been fired. "Ma'am?" her assistant asked. "What do we do now?" Dr. Vasquez smiled as she watched the last alien ship disappear into hyperspace. "Now we go back to pretending to be a peaceful species. We return to exploring the galaxy, making friends, learning about other cultures." "And the weapons? The hidden fleets? The exile ships?" "They go back to sleep, waiting for the next time someone decides that humanity needs to be taught a lesson." She turned away from the screens. "Because there will be a next time." "There always is." In the depths of space, Admiral Torres stood on his bridge watching his crews secure from battle stations. Around him, the greatest war fleet in human history began to disperse.